the more specific, the better. And be data oriented, crunch the numbers. It's all very well going, I want to make a good living. Well, what does that mean for you? Who are you supporting? How much does it cost to run your life? Once you've got your goals, you can work back from there, and it's like, what can I do on a yearly basis, monthly? What can I do weekly that moves the needle? And then what's one thing I can do today that just tips me towards that goal?
Welcome back to the Creative Endeavor podcast. This is the podcast bringing you inspiring stories from creative professionals from around the world. It's real conversations with real artists. And I'm Andrew Tischler. What a pleasure to have your company in the studio once again. And this conversation with Kirsten Mirrey, who's an artist based in Scotland. She's producing some monumental, inspiring paintings of wildlife, and she's absolutely crushing it with her art business. She's amassed a following of over 100,000 people over on Instagram, and she's got the success that goes with that, making consistent painting sales from her website. In this conversation, I wanted to dive deep into the art business side of things, hoping to uncover a few secrets to her approach and what has made her so successful. There's a lot revealed in this conversation, and I really appreciate her willingness to be so open here on the podcast. We also dove into a little bit of the art creation side of things, which is always fun to do, but this was just really exciting to have an opportunity to connect with somebody who's so engaged and inspired to paint the subject they love. Right now, if you're not already doing so, you can follow Kirsten Mirrey on Instagram at Kirsten Mirrey. That's KRSTENMIRREY. And on her website, that is KirstenMirreyArt.com. And just a shout out to Kirsten for such a beautiful, slick, and well-presented website. I don't know if I've seen a better one. It's really, really nice, and certainly has given me a few ideas. I'm taking notes. Before we get into this conversation, just a quick shout out to our sponsor, Rosemary & Co. Brushes. Rosemary & Co. make some of the finest quality artist brushes in the world. And they really know what they're doing. After 40 years of being on top of their game, it's all I'm going to use now in the studio. Now, I use a wide range of brushes for painting in oils. I'm using bristles, synthetics, and various types of hairs and fibers that will give me different effects. And one thing that I'm looking for is consistent quality. And Rosemary & Co. certainly deliver that in spades. But they not only produce oil brushes that are great for oil painters like me, but they also make acrylic and watercolor brushes as well. Check out what some of the professionals are using, and it's extraordinary how many artists I talk to on the podcast that have discovered Rosemary & Co. as well and are using them with great success in their own creative journey. Visit rosemaryandco.com and find out what the professionals are using. And trust me, your art will thank you for it. That's rosemaryandco.com. And a huge thank you and shout out to Rosemary & Co. for sponsoring this podcast. And just one more thing before we jump into the audio version of the podcast, you really got to see the video version. That can be found only on Tish Academy. Visit tish.academy. That link will be in the description. You'll be able to see me in my studio and Kirsten in hers as we talk about her beautiful paintings and uncover more of her art business tips and tricks, as well as her beautiful work in her studio. So if you want to see that, it really is a visual feast. Check it out by visiting tish.academy. And again, that link is in the description below. Well, I really hope you enjoy this episode of the Creative Endeavor podcast. Here she is. This is Kirsten Mirrey and the Creative Endeavor. Kirsten, it's wonderful to have you on the podcast. So great to finally have a chance to meet you. Welcome to the Creative Endeavor.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me as well. It's nice to meet you finally in person.
Well,
Well, not in person, on Zoom in
on
person,
on
as
Zoom anyway.
digital as like in person gets.
That's it. Well, this is kind of the next best thing, isn't it? You know.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting. Jeff Hine was saying something recently about his that these podcast recordings that he's doing really comprise a lot of his social interaction. And I totally get that now. It kind of is feeling more and more like, hey, sitting here face to face, having a cup of coffee
yeah.
and just shooting the breeze about art. It's cool.
Yeah, me too. I this is like yeah, I'm in Scotland and a lot of my clients are US based, and when I'm like hopping on video calls with them, I'm just like, yeah, like, and it's like I'm in person and I forget sometimes. It's very it's a
Yeah.
kind of very solitary line of work, this artist business, isn't it?
It is, but we're getting more connected these days, aren't we, with all this stuff?
Yeah.
I mean, how
Yeah.
cool is it that you can jump on a video call with with a client and
Yeah.
help seal the deal?
Definitely. And it kind of helps as well them to connect with you as a person, and you're not a scam, you're real, you're interested in their kind of what they want for their piece of art. And
Hmm.
it's just it's such a great easy way to do it, rather than I'm in Scotland, so me hopping on a plane to go see a client's home to talk about commissions just not
Hmm.
logistically on the cards for me right now. So
Yeah.
it's nice, it's convenient, and it's just quite a nice little way to connect people for sure.
I've never had anybody from Scotland on the podcast, to my knowledge.
Whoa.
So you're my first
Nice.
Scottish artist. So well done. Your your work is so strong and really good. And I've been following you on
Thank you.
Instagram for a while. You know, we connected there first. And
Yeah.
you were saying something to me recently about the video version of the podcast. You're like,
Yeah.
you jumped on so you could watch some of the video versions of these other podcasts that we were doing and recording. And so I just want to let people know that they can see the full video version over on the Academy of this podcast. But I'm glad that we did this because I really wanted to talk to you about your work because you had a few posts that you made on social media that really grabbed my attention, where you were giving a little more of the insight into what was going on behind the scenes in your art and some of the stuff that you were going through as an artist as well. And I really appreciated that so much and your transparency there. And so in this conversation, I'd love to dive deep into the making of art, the art business. If we could go there, that would be phenomenal. But before we get into this, I mean, I hope you don't mind. But you're quite young, right? I'd love to know how this journey, how this story unfolded for you. Where did you start your art journey, and how did things really get going for you?
Yeah. So I guess I'm the kind of cliche art kid. Like, I've always been drawing. So ever since I can remember, just drawing, drawing, drawing. And it was always animals, probably more specifically horses. I was the drawing kid and then the weird horse kid as well. There's always one in every kind of place. But so I've always been drawing and creating stuff. And then throughout school as well, I was taking sort of the higher art education and just regular high school and things like that. And yeah, I had goals to go to art school. There's a couple of really great art schools in Scotland, which is really nice. And yeah, as I was getting through my kind of final years of school, I've always loved realism. That's the thing I'm drawn to. When I go to museums or I see stuff online or anything, it's always realism. That's all I wanted to do. I didn't really want to experiment in the same way that a lot of art schools and teachers want you to do. So I feel like that caused a bit of friction when I was preparing my portfolio to apply to these colleges. Um, and so I was painting, I was improving, I was enjoying myself, and just a very specific conversation happened, I guess, where I had this piece prepared for this local art competition. I showed it to my art teacher, and it was I painted a scene from War Horse. Do you know that movie with the?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't remember
I
the.
haven't seen it, but I'm familiar with it. Yes.
Yeah, and there's like a scene where the horse is like running through the fire, and it's very cinematic, very dramatic. And I was like, whoa! So I painted this scene from War Horse, and I showed it to my teacher, and she kind of just looked at it blankly, and I was expecting her to say like, "Oh, nice job," and she was like, "If this is the level of your art, oh, sorry, we've got a cat here now." She said, "If this is the level of your art, you're not going to get into art school." She was like picking it apart. I don't know if she was having a particularly bad day. She was like, "The fire is bad, the motion is bad, this is bad, everything." And then
Wow.
I was just so defeated after that conversation. And
Wow.
that changed a lot for me because
What
it kind
happened?
of, I started to backpedal on art school, and
Mm.
I picked apart my own portfolio, one that I was quite proud of, and I was really, harsh on myself after that. And I thought, I don't actually think, maybe she's right. Like, maybe I need to work on this for a bit, or maybe it's just not for me. So, uh, that was, I guess, like, if you say the kind of last straw. I think it had been building up to that, and that was the part where I was like, okay, fine, we'll figure out something else. As I mentioned, I was really into horses, and then I was very lucky. I grew up on quite a small farm, and we had horses, and I then had a job opportunity at a farm, at a horse stud farm, and I was like, "That's secure. We'll just put art to the side, and I'll go for that job for now." And so yeah, I worked on a horse stud farm from when I left school when I was 18, and I actually stopped painting, stopped drawing, just put it to the side completely, and worked there for quite a number of years actually. Um, and being in that environment, in that world, I was also competing with horses at horse shows. So I was, I guess, in a business term, networking with my ideal clients, because then people, as I started to draw a little bit again and post on social media, people would be like, "Oh, hey, can you draw my horse?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I would draw someone's horse, and they'd be like, "How much?" And I'd be like, £20, just like good, small, cheap money
That's a good deal.
drawings.
That's a good deal. Not
Good
for
pocket
you.
money. No, it's not now I look back, but at the time I was like, gosh, someone's paying me £20.
Yeah.
That's like, wow. Um so yes, so that kind of started that catalyst, and then it just, I guess, snowballed from there. People were like showing their friends like, "Oh, this girl drew my horse, it's £20." I did have to put my prices up after a couple of months, but
Hmm. Hmm.
so yeah, so I kind of built up a client base from there, and then it grew into, "Hey, could you paint my dog?" And I was like, "I've never done a dog, but yeah, sure, I'll paint your dog." And I just very organically started this pet portrait business out of nowhere. And this
Mm.
was like a good couple of years after I'd left school. And by that point, I thought, this is like, I'm doing art, I'm enjoying it, it's on my terms. And I don't see the benefit of me backpedaling out of these client sort of commissions that I'm making some money from now, and putting that to the side to go spend my time at art school, basically. Um, so I thought, I'm just going to carry on with this for a while. And yeah, I carried on pet portraits for many years, and then started doing wildlife work, which kind of naturally leads me to where I am now. And I don't actually do the pet portraits anymore. I've drawn thousands and thousands of dogs and cats and horses, but no more.
Wow.
Just the wildlife.
So it sounds like you've approached this in a very business-minded way. You know, and once it got going, that's fascinating. So Now that things are well and truly up and running for you, this is your full-time gig, right?
Yeah, yeah. So eventually
Wow.
I left the horse stud farm
Hmm.
and said, hey, I'm gonna need to do like art's my passion,
Hmm.
and there's not a lot of money. There's not a lot of money in either. I seem to pick the two like lowest industry paying. Well, I'm trying to dispar the myth of the starving artist, but the quote unquote two low industry paying jobs is horses and art at the time. What was in
Wow.
my mind anyway.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I was like, I'm going to do art full time, and yeah, left my job there and started as I am kind of now.
That's an interesting one, isn't it? The idea of the starving artist. And I mean, so it was interesting, hearing about that negativity from your teacher towards you. The form of negativity that I got was, "What are you doing that for? You are going to starve to death." And we've talked about this on the podcast before, but in case anybody's listening for the first time, it is a myth. It is an absolute myth. Um, Weird. It's weird, kind of how it works as well. Like these things can be a self fulfilling prophecy. We got to be so careful what we're saying to ourselves, right? Like,
Gosh, yeah, and I caught myself there because I've
mm,
had to work really hard to reframe. I think it's how you reframe everything, like your own life and your business and your art. You have to turn all upside down on all the things you've, I guess, been fed over the years,
hmm.
from external sources, teachers, I don't know, the media, all that kind of thing, galleries, and it's really difficult to turn all your kind of beliefs on its head, really. But that's it's what you have to do because it's not true. Where there's like starving artists, it is a myth.
Mm, yeah. I mean, there just there are so many ways to do this. I think one of the reasons that people might be struggling in this industry is because, based on a lot of assumptions. I was having a chat to a gentleman the other day, and he's got it in his mind that he needed to show in galleries, and it just kept getting the door slammed in his face. I'm like, that's giving you clear feedback that maybe this is not your path to work with galleries. There are so many different ways of doing this now, so many different ways of marketing yourself, and this is something that is being revealed to me on an episode by episode basis. The more artists I have on the show, the more I'm realizing, far out, here's another way that the path is unfolding for this individual. So you seem to be marketing quite a bit now on social media. I mean, you're very active on Instagram. The works that you post are like really jaw dropping. They're very striking. When you see that post, it's like, wow. I remember you doing a couple of these spinny ones. Everyone's doing the spinny one, but it does actually work, man. I mean, it gets attention. So how has the response been on social media from posting your work? And would you find that that's the main place you're getting traction now?
Yeah, yeah. And actually, that kind of ties back in nicely to what you were saying before about like reframing stuff. When I started with social media, there was just a certain way that I thought I had to do it. And um, the thing with the kind of spinny round videos and things like that, when I used to look at them, they're so cringe, and you do all that, and I can't do that because that's cringe, and I felt like a lot of that was coming from other artists as well, right? So that was where a lot of my beliefs were when I started social media, was trying to please other artists, which was wrong for me because I'm trying to speak to more of a collector base. I'm trying to connect with the animal lovers, the wildlife, the
Ah,
nature.
yeah.
So I'm trying to speak to them. So I need to do things on social media that speaks to them because they're the ones who are buying my work
Hmm.
in at the end of the day. So I had to get over that in the beginning, where artists used to be like, oh, these things are so cringe and this and that, and I get that, and I'll definitely want respect from other artists, but I have to remember that social media is my marketing platform. I'm there to speak to collectors. It's
Hmm.
how I'm marketing my business, as you said. Um, so yeah, that is kind of how that started off with social media was figuring out how to speak to my people that are buying my work.
I want to circle back to that. But just a question. When did you start with Instagram?
I was in the I've got a screenshot actually. So funny because the app looks so different. I think I screenshotted the day that I made my Instagram. I had 0 followers, and it was like 2000 and I guess 14 was when the app was starting to 2013 maybe a
Hmm.
bit before that. That's when I kind of
Wow.
went on with made my art page anyway. So I've been there a long time. My Facebook page, I think I've had since 2012. That's where I was
Wow.
posting like all people's horses and dogs and all sorts. So I've been trooping on since the start with social media, I guess.
My goodness. Wow. So this is something that I get a lot from students on and members on my academy. They're starting this social media following. They're trying to market their work, but the complaint that comes through so often is I'm only getting followed and attention from other artists. What's going on?
Yeah,
What am I doing wrong? How do I actually reach out to people that aren't doing, because other artists
yeah,
like that they'll want to give you a pat on the back and cheer you on or maybe
yeah,
tear strips off you, but
yeah,
they're not there to buy your work, which is what we want. So
yeah,
what would be some of your recommendations for how to find that buying group through social
yeah.
media? What do you think?
Yeah, it's so funny that question. I love that question because I really struggled with it at the start. And
Mhm.
as I said, I've had this page for such a long time, and actually, I only gained traction on the following um, last year. I think a year and a half ago, I was at 3,000 followers on Instagram, and yeah. So to your question, speaking to the right people, you have to be careful not to nerd out on Instagram. And I love it,
Mm,
and I know you love it.
mm.
Love talking about what color paint I used to create, what brand of paint, what brand of canvas board,
Yeah, yeah.
all those very geeky art things.
Hmm.
There was actually a great story about this, like Steve Jobs when he first was sort of promoting Apple, and he just nerded out on the specs of the Mac,
Yeah,
the PCs and things. I can't remember the exact story word for word, but
I've
it
heard this
just
one.
fell flat.
Hmm.
And then the minute it was like about the person, it was like, this is a simple, this is
Yeah,
easy to use. That's
yeah,
all. And then people were like, love it, easy
yeah,
to use,
yeah.
you know? And it
Mm,
just switched it because people switch off unless they're geeking out with you, which art collectors aren't. They don't
mhm,
care um, what brand of oil paint you used,
mhm.
even though I care what brand of oil paint I use, you know?
I'm watching your
So
cat
yeah.
in the background
Yeah.
just go at this Monstrosa that's behind you. It's what a little dude. What's your cat's name?
Rex. I've got two, Rex and Buzz, and I was trying to shut them out, but they just scratch at the door. So
Yeah,
we're
no,
just
no one's shutting out Rex.
hopefully I wonder if your clever editor can edit Rex and Buzz out of the
No,
background.
I'm gonna get my editor to keep him in there. Um, that's really that's something that I've struggled with. But on that quote, I think I heard that recently. And it's amazing how many tie-ins were in the art business, because I'm listening to business books and learning about business marketing, all this stuff from people that aren't artists. And I find, oh,
Yeah,
that can be applied to art. That can be applied to art. That can be applied to art. Where I heard it was, I'm pretty sure this is right, but I listened to a lot of audiobooks while I'm painting, but it was Donald Miller's Story Brand. And it was Steve Jobs forgetting about who his target was. So yeah, as you were saying, like he was geeking out about specs. He even had like pages of these different components, and no one had any idea what the heck he was talking about. And then the next time it rolled around where he came back into the company, it was like, Apple, think different. That was it. Like yeah. And it's amazing how we do, like when we're marketing ourselves and posting ourselves, we forget about who our target is, and realizing that it's actually about them. It's not about us. And this is something personally I still struggle with, because art's a weird thing, because you're so part of it. You're still so part of it. But the premise of Donald Miller's book, Story Brand, was that your customer is the hero of the journey, not you. But so many businesses and artists are like, well, who's a hero in this story? I am. It's like, no, dude, it's about them. And so I must admit, I am still personally struggling, because I just want to be the dang hero. It's about me.
Me too sometimes. Me too. I have to refrain myself.
So how do you get into that mindset where you're providing a service with what you do, and then making that genuine connection? Like, what kind of language are you using? How are you actually so if you're making a post, in what way? Like, I want to shout you out here and just say, hey, well done, because I love this. And we do see these in various places, but the way you've done it really works. You've shown, like, I'm looking at this painting of the gorilla and its baby, and they're sitting up in the cradle of a tree, it looks like, with that beautiful sunset behind. And you've got two different options to say, hey, here's the way it's going to look in your house.
Yeah.
Like that. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, people do that, but it works.
Yeah. Yeah. People like, it's art is very visual, obviously. So to visualize it in a home, I'm also, when I'm doing these mock-ups, I'm thinking about what kind of homes you have to really dive in. So I'm thinking, what kind of homes do the people that I sell my art to have? So I'm not gonna do a mock-up in a kind of mass white LA concrete mansion. It's the people that are buying my work, I get not more modest, but it's part of their homes, part of their personalities. It's not like a investment art piece. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not
Mhm.
just to decorate the wall. It's connecting the story with it as well. So there's a lot of things to think about when you're presenting your art on your website or your social media, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh, it's extraordinary. Just flicking through your website now, it's a really clean website as well. Like, it's so beautiful. How did you arrive at the wildlife thing, and just what was the moment where you were like, you know what, this is me? And just I'd love for you to riff on this one as well. How do you decide on what wildlife to paint? What is it that your particular artistic eye is looking for, and what do you gravitate towards?
Yeah, the wildlife definitely, as I was growing up, obsessed with David Attenborough TV shows.
Right.
All of the all of that, the cinematic, the just how cool animals, like you see a giraffe and you're like, what, this thing has a massive long neck, it looks mental, so cool because it looks mental. And then you just start learning, you start having a little hyper fixation and learning about stuff, and then you're like sketching or just coming up ways to draw or paint them. You might
Mhm.
go to the zoos when you're younger and see things, and I love animals, so to me the zoo was just like animals on steroids. They're everywhere. It's great for me as a kid. So that's where that kind of started, and then painting them, learning more about their stories in a kind of conservation sense. So obviously David Attenborough is very conservation heavy with his documentaries. So there's always a message, a call to action to
Mhm.
help, how you can help these beautiful animals. So that's definitely where I started to come in and go, I would like to also bring attention to these incredible animals and try and help people learn a little bit more about them as well.
Mhm.
Um, so that is how I got into wildlife specifically. And then I can't remember the second part of your question.
So
how I pick animals.
yeah, yeah. How do you decide on what to paint? What are you gravitating towards visually? Because they're stunning. Like they're very striking. You've got a very slick way of applying that paint, and they're graphically so strong. But what is it that is drawing your eye?
At the start, I think I would find it would be I'd see a documentary or a TV program and I'd see an animal behavior and then I'd go, I'd quite like to paint that, and then it would be a case of finding the reference material and going from there. Or I might come across something online and go, wow, like that's amazing, and just draw inspiration from that kind of scenario. And more recently this year, I've kind of gone back to my roots, so to speak, painting more British and Scottish wildlife. So then now it was about this summer, I just went out, I went camping for 2 weeks in my tent with my camera and tried to capture as much as possible, just a total reset, restart out of the studio. And then it was a case of pulling all these stories that I had encountered with these animals from there, and then based a collection of those really. And that's how I want to do my work moving forward, is doing these big trips and then a collection off the back of it.
Amazing, amazing. I could totally relate to that. I had I mean, well, that full day out just photographing, leaving here at 4, getting back somewhere around 11. It took 3 hours just to get to the location, but the entire day was just photographing. I just kept jumping back in the car, talking to my buddies, saying, "I've got another painting. I've got another idea for a painting." I think I've come away with at least 8 big monster paintings from that. Sometimes you just need a reset. You forget when you're stuck in your studio, you forget, and then just coming face to face with that subject again, boom, the inspiration's there. So I could totally relate to what you're saying. What can one see though when you're camping out for 2 weeks in Scotland? What can you expect to see?
Lots of birds. Depends what time of year, I suppose, you go.
Right.
Um, I definitely saw a lot of birds. I was also quite novice to getting out and about, so I didn't have the proper camo gear on, so I guess I was scaring a lot more away than I should have been, animal wise. But yeah, so red deer stags, which was amazing. Red squirrels, love red squirrels, um, and all sorts. Um, it was just really nice because I forget. Sometimes you forget how nice it is in your own sort of, not neighborhood, but your own country, your own place. You
Yeah.
can you can just forget how cool stuff is. Um, I used to do that. Think, oh, I really want to paint the lions, the tigers, the cool stuff that people love, and then actually I forget there's quite a lot of beauty in the things that you would normally just pass by, with some of the animals, which I quite like.
I love that. I love that. And but do you feel that those paintings do you feel like those paintings come out better? The ones that that feel a little bit more closer to home?
Definitely. And when you listen to, that's why I love podcasts and audiobooks and things, because you can listen to these conversations from people before you and the real greats, especially of wildlife art. And there was a common theme that I was listening to over the past couple of years to these interviews of the great wildlife artists. And it was, go out and experience these animals in person, because you'll pick up on little nuances and things that you can't get from seeing someone else's photograph.
That's right. That's
And
right.
that really struck a chord for me. And I thought,
Yeah.
I guess I have to do that, to to be, up in my game a bit, so to speak. So yeah, that is, it's there's something you can't get sometimes from a photograph.
Mhm.
You have to see you with your landscapes. Sometimes you've got to go out and look at the sky and do a note sketch of the colors you see, and or a little plein air or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And then when you get back to the studio, you can visualize it as you work.
Yeah. I was just thinking about this yesterday, thinking that I would like for a new level of oh, what's a word? I mean, I feel like I've been authentic in terms of like whatever I paint, I really want to paint. But I guess there's a level of accuracy, but it's tied into authenticity of actually having been there, lived it, and experienced it. Because
Yeah,
whenever I was caught up and distracted with things that I really didn't know much about, I would make mistakes that would ultimately be picked up by people who really did know that subject. For example, I put out on YouTube a while ago these drawings of some old sailing ships. Now, in the original reference, it was done from an old black and white photograph, and I was like, "Oh, that is so cool." And in the original photograph, they're being tugged by a little tugboat. And in the version that I drew, I thought, well, the tugboat's not really adding anything to the composition. I'll get rid of it. And there was a guy who commented on the YouTube video and he says, unfortunately, a sailor knows that these boats are being tugged and they're not actually
oh,
sailing because the front jib is down. Like, what the heck's a front
oh
jib?
no.
What the heck is that? And
Yeah,
even in
I
retelling
just
this
wanted a
story,
nice composition.
I just wanted the composition, dude. But it just shows that, like, so here, for instance, like if I have the wrong amount of snow on those mountains and lupins in the foreground, somebody would be like, "Well, your foreground is summer, but those mountains tell me winter. So what's
Oh
going on
yeah,
here?" So yeah, you really do have to experience it, and especially with wildlife. Like there are so many different details with animals, you know, seasons, horns, antlers. I was talking to my buddy who's an outfitter. He's like, "Hey, look, we'll go and see some deer, but unfortunately, this time of year, the deer don't have antlers." Like, what do you mean they don't have antlers? Don't they always have antlers? He's
yeah,
like, "No, they drop." Like, what?
yeah, yeah.
So I'm learning. I'm learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can definitely do creative choices as
Mhm.
long as it's still authentic. Like you said with compositions, if you want to change stuff, if as long as you're there and you know and you can do a little bit of research, that I did the same. So I painted a stag and it was quite a young stag and it had little velvet antlers and I wanted this big monarch of the glen type beefy stag and I just couldn't find one. So I thought I would paint this stag in this position, but I'll add different antlers on, you know. And there is a risk of it not being correct. You maybe add the wrong type of antlers on. But if you get other source material, then you can still make it authentic and change it. It doesn't have to be exactly what you saw if you want
Yeah.
to use your artistic license, I guess.
Yeah. I guess. But my other thought was get some consultants. Hire
Yeah,
somebody that knows that subject and say, "Hey, can you come to the studio and check out my horse anatomy and just make sure I'm on
yeah,
the right track?" For because I'm painting horses at the moment, I need horsey people to pull up my anatomy. Um,
100%. I have a deer guy. I have a
Good.
a guy that
We all need a
that
deer
checks
guy.
my deer. Yeah, he
Good.
checks I'm doing the right deer.
Excellent. Well, I really hope you're enjoying this episode of the Creative Endeavor podcast so far with Kirsten Mirrey. Just a quick, brief interruption and a word from our sponsor, Rosemary & Co. Brushes. When I first discovered Rosemary & Co. brushes a few years ago, it was an immediate paradigm shift within my work. I had no idea what I was missing, and now suddenly I was able to do things with these brushes that I could only have dreamed of before I discovered them. Their quality is unmatched. In fact, they've been making the finest quality brushes for the last 40 years. Their consistency is second to none, and I just love it. Every time I open a packet, get out a new Eclipse long filbert brush, and I'm about to dive headfirst into a portrait painting. I need that consistency and that quality that Rosemary & Co. offer. So you can check that out right now by visiting rosemaryandco.com. Find out what the professionals are using, and trust me, your art will thank you for it. That's rosemaryandco.com. And by the way, they don't only make oil painting brushes, but they also make acrylic and watercolor brushes as well. That's rosemaryandco.com. All right, thank you so much for allowing this brief interruption. Let's jump right back into our podcast with Kirsten Mirrey. I love how real you are, and just going back to what we were saying before, with the way you post on social media, the way you share, how open you are and transparent you are about your story and the things that are driving you. That painting we were talking about earlier with Warhorse, you shared that on your Instagram. And that one really caught my attention. I messaged you straight away after saying that, just going, wow, this really hit home. I imagine that was really encouraging for some people. I still find it shocking that so many youngsters these days, and people just starting, or people going through a career change, maybe they're in a later stage of life and they want to go into something, like how just a word of discouragement can really set them back so far. I just wanted to say, I really appreciate how you shared there. Did you find that how was the response to that reel in particular?
Yeah, it was really nice. It's always difficult being a little bit vulnerable on the internet sometimes. I find it quite hard, especially to just be vulnerable like that, in case people think it's cheesy or it's gimmicky or it's and it was really nice. I actually got a lot of messages more so than comments, which was quite nice because it was people, they wanted to feel in a safe space in my DMs rather than comment that they related to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a lot of messages from people saying that, like, oh, this was me, and I think and then I really remember that's what it's all about, is it's posting those bits so people can relate and feel better that they've not done the same thing but by themselves. There's other people going through the same thing, and also that there's someone that's been through the same thing and it took a little bit longer, but I did come back to art eventually and I was able to do that. And that, I think, gave a good bit of encouragement to people that they can come back to it, um, you know, if they want to.
Mm, yeah. I mean, it's and what an extraordinary place as well to share. I mean, I just love how everybody's connected now in this way. In certain ways, it's a little bit weird, but I am old school that way. But I
Yeah,
still think it's fantastic that we can follow each other, we can comment on each other's work. I still look at it and just shake my head and just go, far out. What's even going on? This is
yeah,
this is extraordinary. Um, how this is something that I'd love to ask you, I'm asked this a lot, which is about getting over the fear of sharing your work. I mean, there you were expressing that, maybe this is oversharing, maybe this is just, a little bit too personal or whatever. But do you, I mean, if people don't get out there and share their work, if they don't start an Instagram or a Facebook, if they don't get online, how's anybody going to find them? Like, how do you get over
yeah.
that fear of putting yourself out there?
Yeah, 100%. I guess you have to just start. And that is awful to say, because some people are like, oh, that is the worst part, is just starting, just
Mhm.
something small. And it's even, I used to not want to have my kind of face on camera or do, like, Instagram stories.
Right.
I found that really difficult. I just wanted to share the pictures of my art, and I was like, I don't want to be in this. I want it to be about the art, and that was quite difficult for me even to get over. So you just have to start. And do you know what I think now is that, if you shouldn't, because you should just keep things up, don't delete them, but you can delete stuff if you leave it up for a day or two and you're like, man, this is not going the direction I thought it would. You can delete it, and no one will remember it next week, but you have to start. Maybe that's a bit of a safety net. It's, you have the delete button if you need it, but it's, don't touch it, leave everything up. Yeah, and just getting started. That's a really horrible, cheesy way to say it, but you've got to jump in. You've got to see what everyone else is doing. I really like data. I'm like a data driven person, business, art, everything. So when you collectively see all these artists posting about themselves and their story and they're doing really well, you go, ah, someone's doing something all right over there. Maybe I should try that. And that is how you can kind of get over that, as well as following. You have a great saying. I've forgotten it.
I've ripped it.
Success.
I've ripped it off so many people. But the first place that I heard it was Tony Robbins. Success leaves clues.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
The bit that I added to it was, if you want to get what they got, you got to do what they did. You know,
nice.
and so yeah, I 100% back up what you're saying there. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's okay to feel scared and vulnerable at first, but it gets easier. You know, the
Mm.
more you do something, the better it becomes, and then you kind of level up, and then the next thing's quite scary, and you get over that, and you just keep ticking up the ladder until you're like, whoa, what was I even worried about a year ago? You know?
So if you had to start again from scratch, day one today, and you're like, okay, I'm all in, I'm going into art, I'm going to make this work. What's your approach? What's the first thing you do? What are some of the steps that you'll go through after that?
Yeah. Gosh, I mean, I definitely love the length of what my journey was and how it kind of came organically. But if I know that's not feasible, I was 18, so I was living at home, so it was fine if I could mess up and not have a proper, career out of it straight away. And I think now, you know, you've got a mortgage, you've got this, you've got that, and it is quite scary to start a kind of scratch when you're sort of late 20s and above. And um, I think that you have to have a good solid business foundation slash mind with art as your career, and I think you can do that for free with audiobooks, podcasts, following and signing up to newsletters from business people. They give out great free stuff in their newsletters, and you can write stuff down. There's
Okay,
a couple of cheap courses you can buy.
quick pause, quick pause. Let me jump
Yep.
in there. Who are you listening to?
Oh yeah. Well, do you know what? I have a business mentor now, right?
Great.
And so that has been the kind of key for me, was framing things in a business mind and not an art mind, finding a balance.
Wow.
So for definitely for that, so I have a business mentor, but podcast wise and other things, Dan Martell, he's great. He wrote a book called Buy Back Your Time, right?
I've got that
And this
queued
was a
up.
nice. Oh, you have to listen to it, because I can tell you're busy, right?
Yeah.
and, and like maybe like burn out sometimes.
Oh, all the time. All the
All
dang
the
time.
time.
Yeah, I've become really good at bouncing back. I burn out that much. Yeah.
Yeah, man, you need to listen to Buy Back Your Time. It's
Right.
good.
Awesome. I'm on it.
So but that's maybe like a that's maybe not a starting business podcast, right? But there's the I guess Tony Robbins, there's the old
Mm.
school people that they keep it really simple. Tony Robbins, Harv Eker,
Mhm.
and then there's the kind of the new school people, Alex Hormozy, Layla Hormozy.
Oh goodness.
They're
Yeah.
proper
Yeah.
business moguls.
Yeah. Listening to 100 million leads at the moment.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
it's good, isn't it? Yeah,
So
I
far, so
finished
good.
that.
I loved his 100 million offers. That was great. I listened
Yep.
to that a couple of times, and now the 100 million leads. I'm going, okay, I'm listening, Alex. I'm listening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, and it's great because you can pick up. You don't have to these things. You don't have to take in everything that they
Hmm.
say, because some of
Hmm.
it doesn't apply,
Yeah.
right? So, but and also the more people you listen to, do you ever find that they're saying kind of the same thing
Yeah.
overall?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There's quite simple structures that they all
Yeah.
seem to follow.
Yeah.
And then those are the ones that you go, I'm going to run with that, because
Yeah. Exactly.
they're all quite unanimously saying it.
Exactly.
Um, yeah. And then there's art podcast, there's the creative endeavor, little plug.
The best. Best
The best.
podcast ever.
And
I
there's
get.
a business overlap with these ones.
There is. There is. Can I say that
So,
about my
yeah,
podcast?
yeah. I love how we can plug it to the people that are already listening.
They're
Like
already
they're like,
listening.
yeah,
It's
I'm
like,
here.
yeah, dude, I'm already here. Shut up. That's how did you find your mentor? Like, that's awesome. That's so awesome. Like, that is so just, I want to make this work. I'm going to get help. I'm going to figure out some stuff that I don't know yet. That's like, that is the baller move right there. I'm going to get a friggin' mentor. So how did you find that? And to be willing to go out on a limb and risk, and I'm assuming pay for that as a service, right? So, and they're not, mentors aren't cheap.
No,
They're
no,
not cheap. So
unfortunately not.
how did you find the mentor that you've been working with now, and how long have you been working with them?
Yeah, so his name's Gerard. Shout out Gerard. um, so
Hey,
it was
Gerard.
actually, it came up on an ad on Instagram one time, and I don't go on ads. I always like to think I'm better than them when I scroll past them, but I like this one. It was somebody that I knew actually. It was another artist that I knew,
Mhm.
and I was like, oh gosh, like, and I reached out to her and I was like, hey, you're in an ad. Is this real? It's not a scam. And she was like, oh no, it's real. Um, I get mentored by this guy. It's really good. Um, so I signed up, and you're right. Yeah, it's a lot of investment to get in, and you have to really be sure that you want to commit and that you can put that money into investing in yourself. You know,
Mhm. Mhm.
that is something that I had to really reframe. Was I was investing a lot in my business, like my stock. I was like, I'm gonna buy prints, I'm gonna buy this, that, and I never invested in myself, and I'm the engine behind the business.
Right on.
So the better I am, the better the business is, hopefully.
Absolutely.
So I thought, I'm going to do it. It was group mentorship at the beginning, and now we've got like a little one-on-one thing going because I'm trying to step up to the next sort of level. But it was group mentorship at the beginning,
Mhm.
and yeah, so I learned all of the kind of things, I guess, that we're talking about, of
Mhm.
reframing stuff, and I really want to make things work. So, and I'm happy to struggle through them as long as they need to be. And I know some people sign up to mentorships and programs and they're like, oh, I didn't get anything from this. It's been 3 months and I'm not
Yeah.
doing anything. And sometimes yeah, it's tricky, isn't it?
Oh,
You've got
yeah.
to really look inside yourself, not to sound really corny and cheesy, and just almost get out of your own way to make something work for yourself. You have to have you know a moment like that, to almost like when people reach rock bottom and then they're like, right, something needs to change.
It's funny. This is bringing up so much for me because I had this thought just yesterday about mentorship in particular and dealing with coaches. So I was signed up for, I want to mention the name, but I also don't want to get sued. So I did the first workshop. And over the years, like I've invested probably close to $100,000 into myself doing, and people are like, oh, get over yourself. It's so selfish. But no, learning business, getting the books, going to seminars. For a long time, I was a seminar junkie. I look back now and I cringe. I cringe so much. I almost like invert. It's really, yeah, some of that stuff was pretty on the nose. But I ended up in recent years doing one from a particularly big name in the seminar space, and it was a digital Zoom seminar, and there was something like, oh, there were so many people there, thousands and thousands of people there, and it was all about business. And I was signed up to do the next program, and it dawned on me because there might be somebody listening to this going, okay, I need to find some of that mentorship. I need to get somebody to jump in and help. Not so fast. You might not need it. It has worked for me. It will, and I think it will continue to work for me because I do have a mentor as well. Um, but what I ended up doing, because I was signed up for this particular thing, but I found that for the where I was at within my business, it was too general. It's like, dude, I don't need the mindset stuff. I got the mindset stuff. I am showing up. Like, I am driven. I'm all in. Okay. I got a lot riding on this, and I am not stopping until like I collapse in front of the easel and die on the carpet. Like that, that's as far as I'm willing to push this, as much as it takes. So what I found I needed though was something specific towards a particular facet of my business, which was online marketing and website development, that sort of thing. And so I ended up hiring somebody that specialized in that, but also had done it for artists, but for chefs, for all these other people. Wildly expensive, but every time I talk to Wade, we end up making tenfold back. So it's like, there was my consulting fee this month. We've put everything that he said into action. Here's what's come back from that. So it was really targeted. But I figured out when I was in this business seminar, everybody that was coming up on stage, immediately I jumped on Audible and I'm like, I wonder if they have a book. And it dawned on me because I saw Donald Miller on the stage and I'm like, I just listened to Donald Miller's Story Brand book for the third time. I've listened to How to Run Your Small Business for the third time. He's spoken for 2 hours. Both those books are combined are over 10 hours. I got way more information out of those 2 books. If I just applied myself and downloaded the book on Audible for $14, and then I was like, who else is on stage? I just went through all the names. I thought, well, if I held myself to account, I didn't pay like close to, so thousands and thousands of dollars to be there. I thought I could have saved myself a packet, listened to this from the comfort of my own, studio, not had to be up in the middle of the night to fit in with the American time zone here in New Zealand. And I suddenly realized, wow, if I just drove this thing. So now one thing that I'm doing and my team's doing here is we're doing a book challenge, which is every month we need to listen to at least 4 books. And from those books, you have to actively listen to it. So this is the challenge. Actively take notes, actively write down as you're listening to it. Stop, pause, pull over, wherever you are. I put the paintbrush down, I write it down. Oh, gee, that's a good idea. Write it down. So take notes, and then afterwards we get together as a group and collectively we're like, okay, for every book you need to have at least 5 things that you bring to the table that you're able to push things forward. So what are those top 5 ideas that you got? If there's more, great, but at least 5. And so far everybody started the challenge. I had to put a cash prize in there because otherwise my guys wouldn't do it. So a little bit of manipulation there.
You should get an Audible voucher. You could put it's like a vicious circle. Get an Audible voucher, more books.
They wouldn't do it.
Oh, it's so. By the way, that's so true. What you've said is that the fact that if you say you're at the baseline, you're at 0. You're so right. Don't go putting yourself into debt if you're not clear on your goals, your direction, and you just think that a coach is going to, or a mentor is going to come and fix everything for you, because they're not. There's only so much they can do with what there's a lot from you as well in any mentorship. It's not sit back and the money rolls into the bank at all. And yeah, the kind of gateway into that is these audiobooks, and making sure, as you said, that you are learning from them. You're not just like getting the ego boost of, I listened to this audiobook. You're just like letting things pass you by. You're addicted to knowledge, but you're not doing anything with the knowledge. You're not changing anything.
It's knowledge and
you're
action.
The same person.
Yeah.
You're like, you listen to this audiobook and you feel great about it, and then you don't actually, you're the same person a week later. You haven't changed.
Worse is you download the book and you feel great by just having it on your phone without having listened to it. I got that book. Yeah, but have you read it? Have you listened to it?
Yeah. And it's really hard. You have to really, I would guess that goes back to the start when we're like, we want to be the heroes of our story and stuff, and you want to like have the nice ego and everything, and sometimes you have to like look at yourself and say, hey, you're not, like, read the audiobook and make notes and learn something and change something next week. Get up earlier, or go to bed a bit later and do these notes that you promised yourself you were going to do. You've got to do something. You've got to make changes.
One thing that has really helped me with that too, and don't get me wrong, I've got the ego. I've got the ego. People are listening to this like, yeah, we know, but I have to frame this in a way that helps me absorb as much as I can, not only from the books, not only from whatever I see online, but from people in my own team, who are working for me technically, but I see them as working with me. They're part of my team. And the thing I tell myself is everybody is my superior in some way. Everybody is my superior in some way, except for Joe. Um, oh, he's got his headphones off. He's listening. Okay, sorry.
Oh no.
Even Joe. Yeah, yeah. Joe knows more about Honda Civics than I do. A lot more. Yeah, there he
See,
goes.
he's your superior in Honda
He's my in
Civics.
in some way, um but that has helped me because I'm like, okay, it puts me into more of a service mindset and flips me more into that role where I can receive something, and not selfishly, but it's like, okay, I just need to take a back seat here and learn a little something.
Yeah,
But you mentioned a word there, and immediately I went, ooh, I really want to know. And I ask a lot of my students, my academy members this, friends this, my own team this. Goals.
goals. Yeah,
Kirsten, what are your goals?
yeah,
Can you share some ideas, and maybe how do we set goals, and maybe give us an example of one of your
yeah,
goals, and why is it? I think goals have gotten a bad rap. A lot of people, again, they go, ugh, lame, cringe. But for me, it's like, hey man, if you don't know where this ship is going, you're never going to get there. You're the boat on the
yeah,
water without a rudder. You got to have a point on the horizon to aim for,
yeah,
you know?
100%.
So,
And
so
the
uh,
more
what's your approach to this?
specific, yeah, the goals, I have, I guess, two separate goals from an art perspective and a business perspective. There's like
Hmm.
a Venn diagram, I guess, where they overlap slightly.
Awesome. Yeah.
So business goals, I'd say the more specific, the better. And be data oriented, crunch the numbers and figure out exactly what you want,
Mm.
because it's all very well going, I want to make a good living as an artist, and then you're like, well, what does that mean for you? Who are you supporting in your household? What's your mortgage? What's your light bill? What's your heating costs? What's How much does it cost to run your life and all the things that you want to do? And you have to be so specific. Then you've got
Mhm.
taxes, you've got all that boring stuff to add on at the end, and then it becomes this number, and you're like, when you actually put substance to it and get specific, you'll realize most of the time that it's a much higher number than you thought it needed to be when you add
Right.
everything up together.
Yeah. Yeah.
It costs a lot to, in this day and age, to be alive
Right
and
on.
running and doing and enjoying yourself and feeling like you have a little bit of time to do stuff, or you've got a bit of money to put in savings or whatever. So I think the more specific you can be with your business, and then once you've got your goals, you can work back from there. And it's like, what can I do? I think someone puts this really well, is like, what can I do on a yearly basis that moves me towards my goals? Monthly, what can I do weekly that moves the needle? And then you could go daily. It's like, what can I do to what's one thing I can do today that just tips me towards that goal, which is
Mm.
quite nice.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
yeah. And from a art perspective, me personally, I want to, it sounds so like, some people are probably listening going, oh really?
I'll do
But
it. Let's go. Come on.
because if you don't set yourself high accountable goals on a big podcast, what are you doing? The art goal is, I guess, I want to be one of the kind of forefront, who you think of when you're, the Batemans and the
Oh wow.
Beecham.
Yeah.
I
Oh
want to
yeah.
be, this is long term goals. This isn't
Hmm.
next month I want to be as famous as, Robert
Mm.
Bateman. This is, you know when as my career expands, I want to be in that space, and especially as a female wildlife artist, where there's not an awful lot of us that are in the leagues. I guess there are, in the sense that there's amazing women wildlife artists, but
Hmm.
I feel like a lot of them fall under the radar compared to when you think of the,
Hmm.
Carl Brenders, Robert Bateman,
Hmm.
all these people right at the top.
Hmm.
It is all men, and I kind of
Yeah.
want to break the
Mm.
space a little bit. That has been one of my goals, that
Mm.
to improve my art to the level that it feels like I can be up there one day in the distant,
Mm.
distant future.
Have you connected with Carla Grace?
Do you know, very briefly, occasionally, every now and again, just like a message back and forth. But
Awesome.
yeah, I love, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
amazing, right?
I'm such a
So
fan.
good.
I'm such a fan of her and her art. She's
Yeah,
awesome, and I love what she's doing. I mean, she's got to take. Speaking of business minds, good night. She's got to take on business that is so
yeah,
inspiring. And when I hear about what she's doing, I'm like, what you? How did you do that? Like, how did you get that deal?
yeah,
How did you get like? Uh, she just got an ability, but she'll probably put it down to just get out there and do the work, you know.
yeah.
But she's
So, and
extraordinary.
isn't it amazing how much free content she's giving to help other people on? I know
Unreal.
she does like paid subscriptions and stuff,
So
but
generous. Yeah,
gosh, you can learn so much from
absolutely.
the free content she's and other people are
Mhm.
putting out there. It's like people need to capitalize on these free things that people are very generously giving out to us all.
Yeah. I love that goal though, of being out there, and wanting to be one of those female artists that is now at the top of the totem pole with the other wildlife greats. That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. But is it about being famous, or is it about that recognition that comes with that position? What is it about that you find is attracting you?
Yeah, it's I guess the idea of someone wants a piece of wildlife art in their home,
Hmm.
and I'm one of the names that crops to mind.
Top of mind.
That's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the goal for me is,
Awesome.
um so I connected with David Yarrow. He's a photographer,
Yeah.
does the
Nice.
black and white. He's Scottish as well.
Mhm.
Um, we connected at an exhibition of his last year, and just talking to him was so awe-inspiring, that he very much is the top of that game, and anyone's looking for that iconic piece of photography, his name springs to mind, these very top end clients. And yeah, I definitely, I see that path, and I'm like, somebody else Scottish did it. I'm gonna go with that. And I just, yeah, that is, I like setting very tall goals for myself, but long term as well. There's shorter term goals, and then there's like you're right, the totem pole of goals, which is that one.
That's awesome. Really awesome. Yeah, this is inspiring me to revisit mine. I do have some. I have written them down. That used to be one of mine, and I was like, oh no, I need to let go of that. But if I'm honest, yeah, I mean, part of me does want that recognition as well, of being recognized for what I do. But I find that, and this is why I'm blessed to have great friends, and one of them told me in the last couple of years, he's like, you've completely lost sight of who you are as an artist. You need to tap back into that inspiration, that thing that was that initial driver, and get back to that, and maximize on your category. I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah, so right, so right.
yeah.
But
It's like in your niche as well. It's the
yeah,
best thing to do is to niche and go. you know.
I'm worried I'll get bored. I mean, I love portraits, and I love landscapes, and I love still life. and
Yeah.
I've always wanted to do it all. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to limit myself, and I'm going to say I'm not going to paint ballerinas. That's one thing. So I'll just start
There you go.
eliminating options. So ballerinas are out. Nothing against ballerinas, but I probably won't paint any tall ships either. So ballerinas and tall ships are out. Certainly in the
You
same
can
painting,
start
that's out.
scoring stuff off. This is nice. You need a notebook with all the things in the world and just go through and score
Exactly.
it off. I like it.
So this is phenomenal. I've really enjoyed this conversation so far. There's so many different business questions though that I'd love to ask you, and we could easily fill up hours and hours. So we might even have to have a round two. But
Nice.
but before we go, I would love to know, like, so some things like little business questions. So it's like, okay, well, you've got a painting. You're let's just say in this example, say, you're starting out. So maybe somebody that's listening to this is just starting out. They would like to be able to get some of these prices that we're seeing on your website. One of them
Hmm.
here is the elephants, I think was around 15,000, and that converted to New Zealand dollars for me. So that's 15,000 New Zealand. That's around 10 grand in USD, around there. I hope you don't mind me saying that price out on the
No, no.
podcast,
Yeah,
but they're all labeled there. Yeah.
they're all
So
labeled. Anyone can see them.
so to start reaching those sorts of goals, I mean, you're not just starting out and charging that kind of money. How do you price your work in the beginning,
Yeah.
versus now?
Gosh.
How do you feel comfortable?
Yeah.
I mean, part of me wants to ask you, how dare you charge so much? But I get it. I think you should be charging more. But how do you first price your work, in the beginning, and then in later stages of your artistic journey, keep that price high, maintain them, increase them, and deal with the psychological side of that?
Yeah, that's a really good question because at the very kind of start of this, when I was saying about, I was charging £20 for
Yeah.
these like 40 USD for these pictures, that's at the very bottom end of the spectrum. And um, I always seem to go back to data, but supply and the data of supply and demand is quite a good reference point for you. You can start off by seeing what other people with a similar sized audience is quite good, so that they're marketing to the same amount of traffic, the same amount of people, and you can, I don't know, maybe it's bold, but you can even message them and be like, "Hey, like, how do your print releases go, or how are you getting on?" Maybe like warm them up first. Don't go straight for that. Say
Yeah.
like, "Hey, how are you doing?"
How's your business
Um,
work?
yeah, exactly. So it's quite good to have a reference point from there. Once you've got a reference point, don't go too high too quick.
Mhm.
But when I was doing the pet portraits, I was always fully booked, and I loved the feeling of being fully booked. But what that meant was my price was too low,
Hmm.
because 10 out of 10 people said yes when I gave them the price list, and that's an indication to move up a price bracket, which is quite hard sometimes because you think less people are going to buy it. And then you hit a sweet spot where maybe 6 or 7 out of 10 people will say yes, and then maybe 4 people say no, and that's still okay. Don't drop your prices. Those 4 people are just part of the data. That's a really good sweet spot. You don't want 10 out of 10 people to say yes to your prices,
Yeah. Yeah.
because you're not going to have enough time to create the stuff, and you need to be charging more. So there's a balance. There's not an exact science, but the numbers don't lie to you. You can
For
find a
sure.
little average point,
For
and
sure.
you just have to write stuff down. Don't say, "Oh, I feel like no one's buying my work," or very like emotional led responses like, "I feel like everyone's saying no," and then sometimes you have to reframe that and go, "How many people have I talked to? How many people of them said yes? How many people said no? Am I speaking to the right people?" And then you can go, "Actually, no, it was just that I didn't post anything. I didn't have any conversations with people this week. And
That's
you can
so
get the
true.
real answer out of it, you know?
Absolutely. 100%. Because a lot of times we emotionalize this and we're operating
Yeah.
without any of that data, as you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, you can. Someone said a really good quote of like, you can't help how you feel, straight away. It's like
Right
a
on.
reflex response to something, but
That's
you
right.
can pick how you act on that feeling afterwards.
Ah,
You
yeah,
can pick what you do about that feeling. So you might be like, oh, I'm getting no views
yeah,
on social media, which is totally where I was before.
right.
And then I go, oh, the algorithm hates me. I'm getting no views. And then you have to kind of reframe that and go, right, what am I going to do about that?
Mm-hmm.
How am
Mm-hmm.
I going to make it better? Rather than sort of, it's the same with pricing. Um, just being more data led and increment a little bit as you go.
Well, the algorithm really seems to love you. I'm looking here at three of your pinned reels, 10.9 million views, 6.1 million views, 12.4 million views. Let me have a look at this one. Oh, this is brilliant. Oh, this is brilliant. Oh, you're brilliant. So let me
Which one is
explain this.
that?
Let me explain this for the people that are listening. So you start off basically with a TikTok dancer and then a question mark next to 2.2 million.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then you've said, this painting took me 150 hours. Let's give this a try. I can only try, right? You're saying, here's a painting that took me
Yeah.
150 hours. And then you show this spectacular painting. You've got the canvas there. And then you start and you show a few detail shots and then boom, zoom out. And I tell you what, 10,500 comments, 2.5 million likes. It was sent to 1,227 people. That's extraordinary. How many reels had you been posting before you made that?
I a lot.
Right.
These pinned ones just seem to have rocketed, and it's an awful lot of testing.
Right,
I'm
right.
posting a lot. I have a lot of post count on my page, and I
So
am
lots of posts, lots of
constantly
posts.
testing.
Hmm. Hmm.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And then you just hit, I'm sure there's a more calculated way to do it. And
Hmm.
sometimes as well, when you hit those viral posts, what I'm supposed to do really is keep replicating what's working. But I like the next shiny thing. I do it once and then
Yeah,
sort of move on to another style of reel. But
right
I
on.
should actually, what works, if I was listening to myself properly of data minded, then what works I should actually replicate it again.
May
Um,
I
so
may I
yeah,
have your permission to use that idea?
yeah,
I
definitely.
want to do a I might even do it not a dancing one, but I'll do a modern art one and then go to that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
actually have seen somebody do something very similar, and also a lot of these are basically mimics of a style. It's obviously
Mm-hmm.
my own artwork, but
Mm-hmm.
these viral videos, a lot of them
Yeah.
are mimic because the algorithm loves what's already working. So if
Yeah.
you can mimic something that's already working, then you're
Absolutely.
great. So yeah, that one, it had been done by my friend, and he was like, post it," and I was like, I don't want to post it.
So good.
And but yeah, there's a bronze sculptor guy that did a same sort of vibe, with like putting modern art at front. I've not been as brave to do that, even though it's actually what I'm thinking deep down about the modern art kind of scene. So that would be really cool. That would be really interesting. You definitely resonate with a lot of people with that.
Brilliant. Oh, I appreciate it. Appreciate it. Yeah, it's really interesting, figuring out what works, what resonates, and what doesn't. I mean, I've always tried to play that game with the social media within reason. I'm not doing like there's some stuff that I will not do, but some stuff is just like, oh, that's not me, that's not my character. I want to be still me and authentic, but I also want to get this seen by people, because I guess part of my focus has always been mission focused, like, and service focused. Like, I want as many people to learn how to paint as possible, because I think if they unlock that creativity within themselves and start producing things that ultimately make them happy, the world's a much better place and a prettier place, because all this wonderful art's getting produced. But that I get so much meaning out of showing people how to do it. So if it's a stupid reel that said, "Hey, I just found out about you," and I'm like, "Oh, thank goodness you did." So yeah, let's jump on the Academy. Let's hang, you know. So yeah, I've really, you've reminded me about so much, Kirsten. Like, really, what an extraordinary conversation. I'm going to continue to watch your story, your journey unfold with great interest here. I love exactly how, you know, you're hitting this in just the right way. You know, you're doing things that you love. You're painting what's authentic for you. You're at the same time, within that story, you're developing more of that and solidifying that artistic voice. And that's not to take away from the professionalism and the quality that you bring to the easel, to the canvas. But this has been extraordinary. I just want to say thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. Thank you for being on this episode of The Creative Endeavor.
Thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed chatting with you. It's very good. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Creative Endeavor podcast, and a huge thank you and shout out to Kirsten Mirrey. Make sure you're following her right now on Instagram at Kirsten Mirrey. I'll include that link in the description, and on her website, kirstenmirreyart.com. She really is on such an incredible trajectory, and it's awesome to see the fruits of her hard work so far. It's just incredible to witness from far away and seeing her just kick one massive goal after another. I love her business mind and how she approaches this thing as a business and structures that approach. This has given me a few ideas for how to just fine-tune my own creative journey just a little bit more. I hope you got something out of this podcast, and if you did, then please do me a huge favor and leave me a rating or a review on whatever audio platform you're listening on. It makes a huge difference to the show. And again, if ever you want to see the video version, you can find that at Tish Academy. Please visit tish.academy, and that link is in the description down below. All right, I'm going to get out of here and get back to painting. I can't wait to hang out one more time in another episode of The Creative Endeavor.